This meeting.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, especially since it's the long weekend. I'm Ankur Lohani from FindYourFit, and I welcome you all to the fourth session of Empowered. Empowered is a school wellness program focused on students' holistic well-being. Through these engaging webinars, we aim to empower principals and teachers with techniques to enhance children's academic resilience and support their mental well-being. I'd now like to take this opportunity to introduce our esteemed panelists for today. Urvashi Warman, ma'am, principal, the Palace School Jaipur, has been associated with the field of education for 3 decades. She commenced her career as a Montessori teacher and has had the good fortune of teaching students of all age groups. A passionate teacher, she has always taken vocation to be the driving force of her life. She strongly believes that true education is gained beyond textbooks and is possible only if the child is happy and well-balanced mentally, emotionally, and physically. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being on today's session.
Thank you for having me.
I'd also like to introduce Kavita Nayak, ma'am, Associate Counsellor at Anna Chandy and Associates, a leading therapy practice that works with individuals, organizations, and family systems. Kavita ma'am is a professional therapist with over 15 years of experience in the mental health field. A personal crisis brought her to therapy. She overcame the crisis and eventually decided to become a professional therapist. To pursue a profession in counseling, Kavita ma'am resigned from her corporate job. Over the last 6 years, she has worked mostly with teenagers and their parents. Her work with special needs children and their caretakers is her true passion. Her personal experience in this regard has enabled her to be both empathetic and supportive. Thank you so much, Kavita ma'am, for being on today's session.
Thank you, Ankur. I think it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Before we start the session, I'd like to request everyone in the audience to kindly keep themselves on mute and to also put any questions that you all may have for the panelists in the chat box. Over to Kavita and Urvashi ma'am.
Thank you. I think in my continued association with educators, one thing that I've realized is I've got to witness, I think, a lot of work that goes behind the scenes. It's not only about, going and taking a class, the dedication, the hard work. And I think it's a very highly stressful job and, of course, very emotionally tiring. So before we begin, I think I just want to thank all the educators on this call and whoever is going to listen. Thank you so much for all that you do for our students, for our children, right? And maybe Urvashi ma'am, I think I would like to know from you, considering the wonderful long career that you've had, what are some of the challenges that you have faced as an educator, and how are some of the ways that you have coped with it?
So when you speak in terms of challenges, when I was teaching actively in the classroom teacher, the challenges were very different. And that was the time when we didn't really know the word called stress. So we used to have, of course, a bit of challenges, and then we would definitely say that hum thoda sa pareshan hai, it's a little tension hai. But the word stress was not there as part of our lingo in the school, nor was the word stress a part of the lingo of anyone around us. This word suddenly seems to have crept in over the years. And I think post-COVID, it's there on everybody's, everybody uses this word very freely, be it teachers, be it students, be it parents.
Yeah.
So challenges have been many, and over the years, the challenges have changed a lot. And I would say now, at the point of time where we are, where education is concerned, it is a very, very dynamic and a very challenging time, especially post-COVID. With the coming in of NEP, with the coming of NCF and NCRF, and all the changes which are expected to come in the I think at this point of time, it is extremely stressful. And the only way, very short, if I can say, the only way that we can overcome this stress is to keep ourselves updated, not only on what is happening the latest around us, but also where as far as our trainings are concerned, updating ourselves in everything new that is happening, and be willing and flexible to go along with the tide.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say, because I think one of our clients is a Chennai-based school who has been continuously taking, I think, psychoeducation sessions for the teachers, along with, sessions for therapy, like emotional well-being. Yeah. So I think very much needed to, handle the stress, personal stress, as well as the, I think, professional stress that comes with, I think boundaries getting very blurred, taking work home, and the challenging times that, we have just kind of crossed. Right. So how different was it, ma'am, for you as a student? And what is different for your students today?
There's a huge difference. A huge difference. As a student, I think I was far more relaxed, and I was fortunate enough to have enjoyed my childhood. School was not as complicated and as challenging as it is now. Neither was the level of competition so high. So we were able to actually enjoy our childhood a lot. But now I think the children are also very, very stressed out, because there's a lot being demanded of them, not only by the system of education, but also with all the societal changes which are coming in around us, with the advent of technology being used at such a high level.
Yes.
And, especially the adults around them still navigating and trying to find their way about it as to how to stay a step ahead of them. But they generally beat us to it. So they are in for a tough time, because these are high competitive times that we are witnessing. And it's tough.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. I think with that, maybe we'll just dive in to understanding our topic a little bit better. I'm just going to share my screen. Yeah. I hope everyone's able to see the screen. Okay. Yeah. So kind of just to understand, because I think neurodiversity is a term we hear a lot about these days. It's coming to our workspaces in schools and colleges. So to understand what is this neurodivergent, I'm sure many of us on this call are already aware, but we thought we just kind of, just run through understanding a little bit of what is the understanding behind this term, where did it come from? So neurodivergent is a non-medical term that describes people whose brains develop or work differently. It was coined in 1998 by an Australian sociologist called Judy Singer, to recognize that everyone's brain develops in a unique way. It was essentially to do away with the term that we use. We term people as normal and abnormal. So for us to understand that there is no normal definition of how a brain works. So each one of our brains works differently. So when we say neurodiverse person, it means that this person has different strengths and struggles from people whose brains develop or work typically, or neurotypical persons, right? So some of the people who are neurodiverse are born with it, and for some of them it comes, it's acquired because of maybe a medical condition or an accident or a trauma that happens to the brain. So this is understanding what is neurodivergent, and these are some of the terms that come under the categories under the neurodivergent umbrella. So we have the learning disabilities, that is dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia. There are eating disorders, there is anxiety. And as you can see on the screen, it involves, a lot more different, like there are personality disorders, There is autism, which is again on a spectrum. So neurodivergence also is on a spectrum, right? So there is also acquired, as we spoke earlier, acquired brain injuries, which can happen over the course of a person's life. Yeah. So I'm just going to stop my screen. And ma'am, if you could maybe at this point speak about what are some of the effective ways that you are able to, help out educators at your school when they come to work with neurodivergent students.
So I think, yeah, we are trying our level best to get things done in a way where we can be of help to the children. And the first step towards any change is towards orientation and sensitization. So that is something which happens very regularly in our school. We have a multidisciplinary cell, which we have named it with a child-friendly name called Magic Pie. And I have a wonderful team here working with me. And they ensure that there is sensitization happening at every level, be it with students, be it with the teachers, even with the support staff. So it is done every year, the sensitization for the teachers and for the support staff also. And for the students, they enter every classroom and sensitization programs, and especially the focus comes on the classes where we know there are a couple of neurodivergent students. So there, the students are sensitized as to how to deal with it, what are the things they need to ignore, what are the things they need to understand, and where all they can step in and become buddies. So this kind of brings everybody on the same page and same platform. And this is the first step that is there to help the educators. And second thing we do is that we make sure that we are not putting too many neurodivergent children in a specific classroom. So, because otherwise it becomes very challenging for the educator to deal with it. And the educator, so we make sure that, it's well balanced, and also that, so that the general children, the neurotypical children, their studies don't get interrupted. So that is also done. Also, we also try to be mindful of the fact that if any educator is undergoing an overwhelming time, maybe because of some challenges at home or at workplace, then we try to see if we do not give her a neurodivergent child, because it can be very, very stressful in class, dealing with neurodivergent and neurotypical children at the same time.
Yeah, it's, I think, really wonderful to hear about all the, initiatives you have taken in your school to take care of the students as well as the, educators. And having discussed in the beginning of how highly stressful this job is and emotionally tiring, let's now kind of understand, what is stress and what are some of the parameters for us to know, whether I'm undergoing stress, because I think it's very important for a teacher to be able to, balance work and also home life, right? Because I think when they come into class, it may be a class as small as 25, but there are 25 different, children from different backgrounds, maybe going through their own turmoil or challenges. And for a teacher to be able to deal with it, I think is important. And I think it begins with self-care. So just for us to kind of understand, for the teachers to maybe have a look at. And so stress, as you rightly said, ma'am, I think we talk a lot about it, and some amount of stress is good for all of us. Use stress, as they say, which is needed to kind of, I think, motivators, keep us moving. But these are some of the brackets for us to understand when stress starts to disrupt our daily routines, right? So so in the sense of behavior, it can start with, not wanting to go out anymore. Maybe you're very interested, you kind of are very interested, you take active part in school, active part when it comes to your social settings, but you find that you just don't have the energy, or don't want to do it anymore. You'll find yourself withdrawing from close family and friends. dependencies can start to happen, and also not able to concentrate. These are some of the common behavior symptoms that can show up. So when the mind is heavy, as they say, physically, it also starts to, you start to feel tired all the time. Headaches and, muscle pains, sometimes stomach upsets, not able to sleep, or you're sleeping more, right? So these are some of the things that we need to pay attention to. Suppose, you start to notice that there is a change of appetite, either you're eating more, eating less, right? So these are some of the physical manifestations or physical signs that your body is trying to tell you that please take care of yourself. I'm not feeling okay, right? And because of, emotional and physically, when you are, you don't have the motivation to do things, these feelings can start to show up. You might start to feel sad most of the time, feel disappointed, you start to lose confidence because you want to do things but you don't have the energy. Overwhelm, as they say, happens. You're guilty because you're not able to perform well in the different roles that you have in your life. You're irritable, frustrated. So these are some of the feelings for us to watch out for. And because of all this, a person starts to have these kind of thoughts. Like you might start to feel I'm a failure, it's my fault, I'm not good enough, and I'm worthless. Sometimes, you feel like life is not worth living, right? And you start to feel like a burden to to yourself and to people around you. So for us to understand if this is happening, continuously, sometimes yes, stress is, because of a particular reason, and once you've solved it, or if there's a particular challenge you overcome, stress goes out of our life. But if you feel that it's continuous and it's starting to disturb your working, your functioning, then it's important for us to kind of take a pause and start to take care of ourselves. So any thoughts or insights at this point, Urvashi ma'am?
I think that's a wonderful list that you have put through. It's mapped very beautifully, and especially the word that you had over there, overwhelmed, because I often find that teachers are overwhelmed, and and they do undergo a lot of these uh, things, all the feelings and emotions that you have mentioned over here,
Correct.
and things become more difficult when they don't know what's happening with them. That is the problem. And so that adds on to the fear. So sometimes it is very obvious because a teacher who's typically very stressed, maybe it could be some challenges at home, it could be some challenges at work. For any reason, if the teacher is stressed, we find that sometimes he or she starts getting into frequent scraps with the colleagues. We find become very short while answering, hypersensitive, take offense very easily, and they may end up shouting a lot in the classrooms. The work efficiency goes down, and they know that they are sliding, and then they'd say that I don't want to work it. I can't handle it. It's beyond. So it's a very common scenario, and so what we do in school is that if we do find a teacher struggling in some areas, so I try and talk to her myself, and we have a wonderful counselor also. The teachers also turn towards the counselor for help, and they have each other. So we do try and help the teacher understand that it's a phase, and there's nothing wrong with him or her as a person, and they just need to take care. And majority of the times we found that they're especially told to take care of their vitamin levels, because we find that many times it's when the vitamins level go awry, the vitamin D, the B12, that's when a lot of problems at the physical level start coming in, and they end up putting the teacher under stress. So we just help them to navigate these feelings and to understand what is going wrong with them.
Okay.
Which
And
helps.
And I think that is something that we also recommend to our clients when they come in, especially after COVID, to check the vitamin D, B12s, and the thyroid levels, right? And that is sometimes where the work begins with that. So I think I'm just going to connect it to the next slide about what you said about how a person can progress and, how it progresses into feeling maybe just not so good in the beginning, and it can progress into feeling ill after, if the right intervention is not given at the right time. Yeah. So, yes. So this is what we call a mental health continuum model. And as you can see that, it goes both ways, just like with physical, physical fitness. Mental health also can go in a continuum, and you can start to be perfectly healthy. And if stress comes in and you're not, we're not taking care of it at the right time, these are some of the ways that a person will see changes happening. So here is healthy, as we know, normally functioning, you're going about your work, perfectly able to do everything in all your roles. And this is where the stress kind of starts to show up, right? So we call it reacting, wherein your body, or you start to get physical symptoms, behavioral symptoms starts to happen. If intervention is not, taken at the right time here, the mind starts to become injured. So that means you start to feel a significant, you're not able to function. It starts to slow you down, and it starts to affect your mood. And, even then, if care is not taken, a person starts to feel ill. And that is what we call a clinical disorder. There is severe persistent impairment, and which sometimes will need medical intervention. Right. For example, if I can go with a simple example, reacting is when maybe you're just starting to feel a little bit irritable, right? And day to day, you're not able to do the task, but you ignore it. What can happen next is, you start to become, you start to become angry, right? The small irritation, you're angry at everything. And here what can happen is anger outburst. You're not able to control yourself. Maybe, you lose control of what you're saying, and sometimes, it might lead to a panic attack. So this is for us to understand how this continuum works. Important for all of us to recognize, where am I, am I am I in the reacting stage? Yes. If I'm seeing some symptoms, happening maybe for the last few, about more than a week, then yes, to kind of start to take care of oneself. And I think once we kind of recognize that, yes, I am not feeling too well, stress is maybe somewhere getting to me, the challenges are not, I'm not able to contain it. Yeah, it's everyone's responsibility to take care of oneself, yes. But usually what happens is we hold back from, asking for help. So according to the psychologist Carla Nomberg, these are important support systems. So maybe, for us to identify who are our support systems. So she basically classified into three. There is protein, crew, and peeps. So protein are the professionals in our life. It can be the doctor, it can be the therapist, it can be maybe I want to do, teachers, like I want to learn swimming, I want to do yoga. So the teachers, it can be somebody who is, who's professionally qualified to kind of turn to when I need the support. It can be a psychiatrist whenever required, right? So this is a level of support to kind of turn to. They are called proteins. The crew are the people who share a common interest. So it can be colleagues at office. It can be friends, but not really. Maybe they're not really close, but it's friends. Maybe I have joined a gym, or I've joined a hobby class. So these are people basically, or my community around me, my, where I go in and maybe like, meet during social gatherings. So these are my crew whom it's important for us to recognize and take support. So suppose I'm not feeling, I want to maybe just go and, or it can be a walking group sometimes, like the common motive is walking, and then, kind of getting exercise into our life. So these are people whom we share common interests with, very important as a support system. And the last one is what we call peeps. They are family, friends, close friends and family whom we can confide in when I'm not feeling too good, right? Who are there to comfort us, to support us, right? So maybe for us to, take a minute after after this session, today or tomorrow, to kind of identify who are my important support systems. Because once we know that, taking care of myself becomes, easier, because you realize you're not alone. And there are people out there who can support you and, who can protect you and help you in your struggle. So,
Very well put together.
thank you.
I really like that mental model continuum that you showed, because I could place myself, where I am, and I'm sure it would also be of great help to the educators who have joined us today to understand where they are and to know that it's okay. It's
Yeah.
not the end of the world.
Yes.
So it's a point where you can, because it goes both ways. I see, if the continuum, if we see, it goes both
Yes,
ways.
yes.
Things can be reversed and you can go back to normal.
Very much.
It's
Yeah.
the right thing. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepti ma'am and Urvashi ma'am, for an insightful session. I was also trying to see where can I place myself in the 4 feeling boxes. Thank you so much. We would now love to hear from the audience. We request everyone to kindly put your questions in the chat box. We've already received 3 questions, so perhaps we can start with the first one. The first question is, how are educators able to identify children with such disorders? And what are the initial steps that can be taken for this?
I think, could you repeat that question once again?
Sure. How are educators able to identify children with such disorders? And what are the initial steps that can be taken for this?
So it is very important to have trained professionals with you to help identify. And like we have our special cell, Magic Pie, where we have our special educators, we have a SENCO. And as I said, they do regular sensitizations, and the educators have been provided with a checklist that, whenever they are in the classroom and if they find that any child is facing a repeated issue, it could be a behavioral issue, it could be an academic issue, it could be a combination of both. So there is a checklist that is provided, and then the general educators, they check it against the checklist. And if a certain number of checklists they are checked for positive that this is there, then they refer the child to the department, and then the department swings in to do the informal observations and to find out exactly where the problem lies. In case they find that, yes, it is a really problem at a very high level, then if required, they are also directed to go to professional doctors outside to get their tests done for a formal diagnosis, formal assessment. So teachers on their own, if they have no clue about this, will not be able to do it.
So is there some level of training that the teachers are given in schools?
Pardon?
Is there some level of training that the teachers are also given at the beginning, or is it only when the student, when a teacher identifies that a student may be neurodivergent is when this comes in?
So so it all depends on the policy of the school, the philosophy of the school. So if they are willing to take in neurodivergent students, then they need to make sure that the staff is ready to handle and the staff knows what is happening and how to go about it and what is a problem, what is not a problem. Because sometimes children can have behavioral issues even if their disturbance is coming from home. Or again, if there is any kind of a chemical imbalance happening, it can be for various reasons. So that is the training should ideally be done for all the teachers in all the schools, because I personally refuse to believe that there would be any class there in any school where there are no neurodivergent children. They would definitely be there at various degrees. The neurodivergence would be at various degrees.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think it's very important, as you said, ma'am, for the teachers to be aware of, otherwise, as you said, behavioral issues could be coming from something not going okay at home, but the child is labeled and, kind of ridiculed and criticized, and it just adds to the pressure that the child goes through. Right. And also, I think at this point, I want to just add that it's important for the parents also to be kind of looped in and educated. Otherwise, I think most of the time, for us, the parents are the challenge, because they go into kind of a denial. They don't accept what the child is going through, and a lot of work has to happen from there, because if the acceptance doesn't come from the parents, then I think as educators it becomes even more difficult for you to work with the child.
Agreed. And it's just not acceptance. It's also they have to know how to
Yes.
set level of expectations also. Sometimes first they are not willing to accept that there's a problem. Second, they're not willing to accept that if there is a problem, then the level of expectation cannot be the same as they would have of a neurotypical child. So that is very difficult for a parent to understand, and teachers really struggle. I mean, I think they find it easier to work with children rather than to work with the parents. That's a bigger challenge.
Yes. Yeah. Very well said, ma'am. Very true.
So I'll go on to the next question. How can parents support teachers to not be stressed? That's a very relevant question.
That's a huge support. Parents can either be there to support the teachers for not getting stressed, but majority of the times it's the other way around. Especially nowadays, we find that whether it's a neurodivergent or a neurotypical parent, parents do not have the right idea of what is good parenting. And most of the time, a lot of useless stuff is happening in the name of good parenting. A lot of bad parenting happens. And that spillover comes over to the teacher because they refuse to cooperate, because they have their own ideas, they have their own level of expectations, and they keep foisting it upon the teachers, and she or he finds it very difficult to deal with it. So I think the best way a parent can support an educator would be if the parent is also oriented and well informed and is in a form of acceptance. So if that is there, that is the only way they can support the teacher and reduce the stress of the teacher. Otherwise, it's very difficult.
Another question that's come up that says, I'm often faced with a dilemma regarding what is more important, providing just a conducive environment to a neurodiverse child in the class, or to also make sure that he or she understands academics too.
Very, very good question, and a very typical one. So this is a discussion we had in our department a couple of days ago, and it's very difficult to strike a balance between giving them a conducive environment and just doing academics. So I think it's a there is no one set answer for this. It really has to be taken from case to case. There are cases where parents are very clear that I need social interaction for my child, and I'm okay if the academics are not that great. And so that makes our life easier. But there are those who have expectations of social interaction plus academics happening at the same level as a neurotypical child. And that's where all the problem starts. For a teacher, it's very difficult, but the teacher has to take this decision together with the parent, right? So there has to be a proper matching of what the child's limitations are and the capabilities along with what the parent wants. So again, educating the parent and making them understand is very, very important. Otherwise, yes, it is extremely difficult for the teacher to take this decision all by herself.
Sure. I'll go to the next question. So Urvashi ma'am, how do you protect a vulnerable teacher, not give her a neurodivergent child? Do the other teachers take it positively as a divergent child means a lot of extra work?
Yes. A divergent child means a lot of extra work. So usually, if there is a decision to place a neurodivergent child in under a specific teacher's care, it is basically to knowing that a specific teacher would maybe have a higher empathy quotient, would be more compassionate and more patient. And sometimes I would say every teacher has these qualities, But again, as I said, time to time, there are times when certain teachers are having a struggle of their own. So it is a difficult thing, but we try not to give them very typical or difficult cases for a period of
कितना
time
टाइम चाहिए वर्ड मीनिंग को लर्न करना है
till the teacher is not able to get a grip on her own self. So basically, all teachers are handling neurodivergent children.
Okay.
There is no way we can escape that.
So that brings me to the next question. Very relevant, I think. Would love to hear from both you, Urvashi ma'am and Kavita ma'am. What about the stress on teachers, which at times passes down to the students and in the teacher's workspace as well? How does a school or a principal handle that?
So, yeah, it's a very common scenario when the teacher is stressed and she passes the stress in the class. It is a very typical scenario. So here again, there can't be any one solution to this problem as for me. Again, it has to be taken on a case by case, so we have to also understand whether it is the teacher's basic nature to become stressed very easily and to generally kind of create a riot and a mess because she's unable to handle or is not willing to handle a situation. So that comes with the head of the institution actually understanding the personality and the strengths and weaknesses of every educator in the school. So knowing and understanding the basic personality of a teacher helps us then to deal accordingly. Because both the cases are different. Sometimes it's the basic nature not to cooperate. Sometimes it is a problem that for some time the teacher has become non-cooperative. So a lot depends on that, how things are handled. I don't know what Kavita ma'am would have to say for this.
And yeah, I think I agree with you. And also, I believe, as I mentioned earlier, it's about, I think, making, mental health, kind of talking about what is happening to you, easily accessible to the teachers also. Usually what happens in schools is, there's a therapist for the students, but, the mental health or the challenges that teachers are going through is not usually addressed. And it kind of naturally comes down either, at the workplace or when they kind of take it back at home. So I think important for each school to recognize that, and as I mentioned earlier, we have a school based in Chennai who's, made this mental health. They can kind of approach our therapist and whenever whatever is happening for them, they kind of come and talk about it. And if they're able to manage and deal with it better then. So I think that is something that I think other schools also should kind of look at.
Adding to that, so what we do in our school is that if we find that a particular teacher is running extremely overwhelmed and is running extremely stressed, so we do try and have a one-on-one talk with the teacher concerned and generally to ask, is everything okay? What's wrong? Right? So because I think it's very rare that anybody is asked like, what's wrong? Are you all right? So that is the first thing to say that, okay, yes, we understand that things are difficult. Hear them out. Sometimes, just hearing them out also eases them out. And otherwise, if the problem is more deep, then of course, telling them again to go in for their tests. If the vitamins are also all okay, then the teacher is definitely advised to take good care of herself, if possible, if willing, take mental professional, help from a health professional and from a counselor, and to look after herself or himself by pursuing their hobbies and to giving time to themselves, because sometimes they are stretched too much in various directions and they forget to take care of themselves. So then they're gently reminded that it's important to cater to your own needs before you take care of the needs of others.
Very much. I think self-care is really important in physical, emotional ways.
True.
The next question is, what are the misconceptions or myths related to neurodiversity in the school environment?
Kavita, would you like to take that?
Maybe you can start.
Lot of myths. Yeah, so I'm sorry, I'll be using a word which we are not supposed to use, but I'm being very candid. You know, if it's a neurodivergent child, the basic perception is कि ये तो पागल है. And nothing can be further the truth than this. The child definitely may be having behavioral issues or not. The child may be boisterous, maybe a little rowdy, may tend to be also tend to have tendencies of self-harm, or may become violent towards children around them. But then if one understands that it is because of this that the child is a special child, the child has got special needs. If that one understands, then I think a lot of help can happen, can get done. Myths are this, and myth is that, another very big myth is that, you know, sometimes think कि इसकी treatment कराएंगे ठीक हो जाएगा. So then we have to tell them कि ये कोई सर्दी जुकाम नहीं है. It's not a seasonal viral wherein you'll give a set of medicines and you will just give the child some shot of antibiotics and the child is going to become a neurotypical child. It's a condition which you need to understand, accept, and empower yourselves to deal with it, because that condition is here to stay. It can be managed very well if dealt properly. Otherwise, there is a problem. So, and there is a lot of fear around this area, especially with parents.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fear.
Yeah, and I think this fear actually puts a lot of pressure on the child. And then you're looking at, treatments which may be, kind of offbeat, to turn to religion, do all those things somewhere, hoping that my child will become normal, as they say, which is, I think, again, I don't want to use the term, but that's what happens, right? So I think really educating the parents, getting them to accept the child's strengths, right? To focus on that instead of looking at what are the limitations or what are the challenges, to kind of look at it in a way that my child is different and these are its strengths and this is what I want to work with. I think that is an important step that, that's where it all begins somewhere. The acceptance, once it comes from the family, it's easier for the teachers and for everyone else to work with. And also for the child to, I think, start to blossom into, come into their own, as they say.
I completely agree with you. Yes. Very true.
Very relevant next question. How difficult is it for parents to accept things? Does it sometimes get really hard to drive home the point with the family?
Extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. Like I have come across very few parents who have willingly accepted that there is a problem. And interestingly, more qualified the parent, the harder it is for that parent to accept that there is my child has a problem. So especially if the parent happens to be very well placed in society and is a very well placed professional, then it is very difficult for them to accept that there is a problem, and they go into a denial. They refuse to take help. They don't even let the school help, and because they just want, it's like, they become like ostriches who put their heads in the sand to say the problem doesn't exist. And it takes quite a while for them to actually then come around and understand and accept that, yes, okay, there is an issue and we need to look at it and, help the child. Yeah, it's very difficult.
Yeah. And I think, again, in my experience also, I think there's denial, then there is shame, and that shame leads to secrecy. You're kind of trying to, not talk about it. And we should realize earlier the intervention sometimes, it's easier for the child to manage, their routines. But sometimes the intervention is so delayed that it becomes extremely challenging for, the child to really, maybe manage their daily routines.
Agreed. Absolutely. Yes. True.
So any awareness programs that can be done for societal acceptance? This is the next question on the chat.
Well, if I talk of my school, we do conduct an annual event every year. And interestingly, the last event that we had, the topic had been demystifying neurodiversity. And in this, the department puts across activities very beautifully, and a lot of awareness posts are also done and activities are designed where the students they come and they go around taking part in the activities, attending any kind of talk, and parents are invited, students are invited, even city teachers are invited to be a part of the event. That is our bit, small bit, to spread awareness in the community, in our community of educators, that there is an urgent need to become aware and sensitive towards these issues. So that's what we do at a very small level. Then we are also connected with a large group of organizations and schools who are also trying to do their bit in raising awareness. So in Jaipur, for past couple of years, we've been taking the lead with the Walk for Dyslexia, and I'm very happy that our management, Princess Diya Kumari, she has been a pillar of support, and I think till the management does not agree to join, to be a part of this whole journey, and if they do not empathize with the cause, nothing is possible. And she's been a real pillar of support, and she's been there with us even for the Walk for Dyslexia walk in the city. And so any kind of a support we need, she's there to give us. So yes, things can happen if you take initiative to spread awareness.
I think that's a really wonderful initiative that, I think your school has been taking, ma'am. I wish most schools will kind of take it up. I think the more we talk about it, the more, we normalize it, the more the acceptance will come.
Yes, I agree. Very true.
In the interest of time, I just take up one last question. So what steps can schools take to create a more inclusive environment for neurodiverse students? And also, how can students and teachers bond during this inclusive environment?
I think, as I said, the first step begins with the will of the management, followed by the will of the principal, and then will of the teachers. There are three very strong pillars which need to say yes and to have a shared vision of taking the challenge of helping these children. Because otherwise, where are they going to go? These children come in an umbrella, especially like in autism, if they're not very high on the spectrum, they are not even fit to, they shouldn't be going to a totally special school also, because that is not going to help them. What really helps them is to be in the company on peer group of neurotypical children. So unless the three pillars are willing to have a shared vision and they're committed to the cause, nothing is possible. That's what I feel.
Thank you so much, Urvashi and Kavita ma'am, for your time today. I think I can take up one more question. I'm just looking at the watch. Actually, there is another question on the chat. So maybe I think I'll just take that up before we conclude the session. So how can schools encourage neurodiverse students to join in extracurricular activities? Do you sometimes see a pushback from neurodiverse students or from neurotypical students who are willing to be in the same extracurricular activity as a neurodivergent student?
It's a real challenge to get them to take part in co-curricular activities along with neurotypical children. And believe me, at times it is not possible. For the simple reason that many times the neurodivergent children, they're very, they know their mind, they will do exactly what they want, right? So with a neurotypical child, you can probably coax the child to take part in a certain activity. But if a neurodivergent child, most of the time, will do exactly what he or she wants. So if he or she does not want to be part of an activity, they will just not be part of that activity. And they have a lot of mood swings also. So one has to be extremely careful. So it is actually very risky to make them a part of it. Many times we have tried several times we have failed, I'll be very honest. Sometimes we have, succeeded. And so many times we try and organize these activities for them at their pace, with the set of children with whom they're most comfortable. But yes, it is very, very challenging.
Thank you so much, Urvashi and Kavita ma'am, and all of the educators for being a part of today's session as we explored strategies for understanding and managing neurodiversity in students. We hope this session has provided valuable insights and practical tools to foster a more supportive and inclusive educational environment. We put a feedback form on the chat. We request everyone to kindly give their feedback on this session. Thank you once again to the esteemed panelists for taking out time over a long weekend and for being a part of today's session.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.